Are you here to hurt my mother too? She's dying, said the little alien girl to the human. The stars outside the human ship flickered like distant fires, cold and indifferent. Captain Luke Harris leaned back in his pilot's seat, his fingers drumming on the console. The outer borders of the system were empty, a place most ships avoided. Space charts warned of collapsing stars and debris fields from ancient wars, but a weak, distorted signal had caught his attention. It was faint, almost nothing, and yet it carried a sound that felt human enough for him to understand urgency. Luke was not a soldier. He was a scavenger, a pilot who relied on wit and instinct to survive. Still, he could not ignore a call for help. The signal led him to a wrecked alien ship, floating silently among pieces of broken metal. It was an enormous vessel, scarred and blackened, as if time itself had clawed at its hull. The metal panels were bent, scorch marks ran along the edges, and the airlock had been shattered. Luke hesitated. His training screamed danger. Boarding an alien craft with unknown weapons or traps was suicide, yet something inside him pushed him forward. The thought of someone out there, alone and possibly dying, gnawed at him. He docked his small ship cautiously, using magnetic clamps to anchor to the alien hull. The airlock hissed open, revealing a darkness that smelled faintly of burnt circuits and stale air. Luke switched on his flashlight, the beam cutting through thick shadows. Inside, the corridors were narrow metal plates creaking under the weight of silence. Broken machinery sparked occasionally, sending tiny arcs of blue light across walls lined with alien symbols he did not understand. He moved carefully, senses alert. The ship had clearly seen an attack recently, but by whom or why, he had no idea. The silence pressed against him as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a small, trembling voice that sounded almost childlike. It was quiet at first, like a whisper carried through the cold metal. Luke froze, shining his light toward the source. The voice came again, more desperate this time. "Are you here to hurt my mother too?" The question made Luke pause, and then it struck him. The voice was coming from a child. He had never expected to find one here in the middle of abandoned war ruins. Moving toward the sound, he rounded a corner and saw her. A small alien girl, no taller than a human child of 8, with pale skin that shimmered faintly and wide, luminous eyes that seemed to hold both fear and hope. Behind her, lying on a shattered medical platform, was an alien woman. Her breathing was shallow, labored, each rise and fall of her chest ragged and weak. The metal around them was twisted and broken, part of the ceiling collapsed in some areas, and a dim red light flashed intermittently. Luke's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but he hesitated. The girl's gaze was unwavering, not aggressive, but terrified. She seemed to weigh him carefully, as if she could see his intentions in a way humans rarely could. I'm not here to hurt anyone," Luke said slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I got your signal. I'm trying to help." The girl's eyes flickered with doubt. "They said everyone who comes, they hurt her. They hurt everyone." Luke knelt down to be at her level, careful not to make sudden movements. "I'm not them. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to help your mother." Her eyes softened slightly, but the tension in her shoulders remained. Luke studied the mother. Her skin was translucent in places, showing faint blue veins, and her breathing sounded shallow, almost like she could stop at any moment. Machines around her had sparks flying and panels had errors flashing. Luke could see that this was no ordinary injury. Whatever had happened here was more than a battle. It was a targeted attack. Can you fix her?" the girl asked, voice trembling. "Please, she's dying." Luke swallowed hard. He had no medical training, not in advanced alien biology, but he had survived worse situations with improvisation. He glanced around the room. Some of the alien medical equipment still had partial power, and his own ship had emergency supplies he could try to use. The situation was grim, but he had faced impossible odds before. "I'll try," he said. The girl's eyes widened, and she stepped back slightly, unsure if she should trust him. Luke rose and surveyed the room. Broken conduits, sparking panels, and damaged environmental controls made it clear that the ship's systems were failing. Even if he managed to stabilize the mother, they would not have long. He needed to act fast. He moved carefully toward a console, trying to access whatever medical data he could. The interface was unlike anything he had seen, glowing symbols shifting as he approached. With his experience in salvage and hacking, he began to piece together readings of vital signs. The mother's life support was minimal and failing rapidly. Her species, biology, was complex, unlike humans in unpredictable ways, but Luke spotted patterns he could work with. Improvisation would be his only tool. The girl watched him silently, her small hands clenched in front of her chest. Luke understood the weight of her trust, and it made his determination sharper. He retrieved a few portable tools from his ship, a medkit, some nano patches, and a field scanner. It was crude, but it might buy them time. He began connecting the patches to the mother, carefully calibrating settings as best he could. Every movement was tense. One wrong step could worsen her condition. Minutes passed, which felt like hours. The mother stirred slightly, letting out a weak groan. Luke adjusted the field stabilizer, improvising with circuits and energy from his ship. Sparks flew dangerously close to broken panels, but he ignored the risk. The little girl edged closer, her luminous eyes following every movement. She's breathing faster," the girl said softly, a note of relief creeping into her voice. Luke nodded, though he did not allow himself to relax. "She's holding on, but we're not out of danger yet." Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. Luke stumbled, catching himself against a wall. Something was approaching outside. His instincts told him it was not a natural event. The girl's eyes widened with panic. "They're coming," she whispered. Luke moved to the viewport, scanning the darkness beyond the broken hull. A patrol ship had entered the debris field. It was sleek, armed, and official. No scavenger or civilian vessel could have gotten here. He cursed under his breath. The patrol would not care who he was or why he was here. They would see the alien mother and child and act according to their orders, which likely meant elimination. The girl clung to his side, trembling. "Please, don't let them hurt her," she said. Luke's jaw tightened. He could leave, get back to his ship, and escape, but that was not an option. Not now. He could feel the human stubbornness rising, the refusal to abandon someone in need. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "Not without her." The patrol ship fired a warning pulse. The ship's walls shook as energy impacted. Luke shielded the mother as best he could, improvising barriers from debris and parts of the broken ship. Sparks rained down, but the mother's vital signs slowly began to stabilize under his care. The little girl, despite fear, began to whisper encouragements to her mother, speaking in a language Luke could not understand. But the sound seemed soothing, almost like a lullaby. Time became a blur of activity and fear. Luke monitored energy levels, patched broken circuits, and kept watch on the patrol outside. Every moment counted. Then, for a brief instant, the mother opened her eyes. Luke caught her gaze. There was recognition, fear, and a fleeting smile. She whispered something, words the girl repeated softly. Luke could not understand the meaning, but the tone was full of trust. She was entrusting her life and her daughter to him. The human felt the weight of that trust press against him like gravity. The responsibility was enormous, yet he had never felt more alive. He had no certainty of success, but the drive to save life, human or not, was something he understood in every fiber of his being. As the patrol closed in, Luke adjusted the final nanopatch. The mother's breathing became steadier. Sparks flew from damaged panels, but the field held. The patrol ship, seeing activity inside the wreck, paused. Luke's heart pounded. One wrong move and everything would be lost. But he had learned long ago that survival often required daring choices, and this was the moment for one. He stood, turning to the little girl. "We'll be okay," he said, though even he did not fully believe it yet. "I promise I won't let anyone hurt you or your mother." The girl nodded, tears in her eyes, but a glimmer of hope breaking through. For the first time since he arrived, Luke felt a strange sense of connection, not just with them, but with something greater. He was a human, fragile alone in a dangerous galaxy, yet somehow his presence here mattered. Somehow humans could still make a difference where others had failed. The patrol ship sent a final warning. The wreck shuddered, lights flickering. Luke gritted his teeth. They would come inside, but he was ready. He had no weapons to match theirs, but he had something they could never predict: human ingenuity, courage, and refusal to back down. And that, he thought grimly, might just be enough. Above all, he could not fail. The little alien girl's trust, her mother's fragile life, and perhaps the survival of a species depended on a human refusing to leave. Luke Harris took a deep breath and prepared for what came next, knowing this night would change everything, not just for him, but for the galaxy itself. The patrol ship loomed outside the wreck like a predator circling its prey. Luke could see the glint of their scanners through the broken viewport, tiny pulses of light scanning the corridors, searching for life. The little girl clung to him, shivering, her luminous eyes wide with fear. "They're going to come inside," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but there was also a quiet determination there. Somehow she trusted him to keep them alive. Luke nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we'll be ready for them. But first, we need to make sure your mother is stable." He crouched beside the medical platform, checking the improvised field stabilizer he had rigged with human tools and salvaged alien tech. Sparks flickered along the edges, but the readings were finally leveling. The mother's breathing deepened, and Luke let himself breathe a little easier. The girl knelt beside her mother, pressing a small hand against her chest. "Mom, you have to stay with me," she said softly. "Please don't leave me." The mother's eyes fluttered open. They were a soft green, luminous yet filled with pain. She tried to speak, and Luke leaned closer, straining to hear. The words were almost incomprehensible, but he caught fragments, warnings, trust, hope. The little girl repeated them quietly, and Luke realized she was translating, helping her mother communicate with him. Luke didn't have time to dwell on the weight of it. He needed a plan. The patrol wouldn't wait. Their scanners were already sweeping corridors, and he could see faint red markers appearing on his HUD, indicating they had located life signs. If they boarded, there would be no second chance. He scanned the room quickly, searching for anything he could use. The wreck was old, damaged, unstable. Panels could be moved to block corridors, debris could be pushed to slow intruders, and the remaining energy conduits could be rigged as traps. Luke's mind raced. Improvisation had always been his strongest weapon. "Stay close," he whispered to the girl. "I need you to follow my instructions exactly." Her small hand slipped into his, and she nodded. "I'll do whatever you say." Luke moved swiftly, directing the girl to help him drag a collapsed section of the ceiling across the narrow corridor. It would not hold for long, but it would buy them precious minutes. He then retrieved a few loose energy conduits, bending them into crude barriers that sparked and hissed when touched. The red warning lights from the patrol ship reflected on the metal surfaces, casting jagged shadows that made the corridors look even more dangerous. Time was passing too quickly. The mother stirred again, groaning softly. Luke rushed back to her side. "Hang on just a little longer," he said. The girl touched her mother's hand, whispering encouragements. Luke realized that the child's presence was doing more than emotional good. Somehow, the bond was stabilizing the alien physiology. It was as if hope itself could influence her healing. The patrol ship fired a pulse through the hull, shaking the wreck violently. Luke hit the ground, protecting the mother from falling debris. The little girl screamed, clutching her mother. Luke helped her up and held them both close. "They're testing us," he said. "We're still alive, that's a good sign. Now we make them pay attention in the wrong way." He led the girl back toward a junction where the main corridor split. He could hear faint sounds of the patrol boarding pod, metal footsteps and voices in their alien tongue echoing through the corridors. Luke did not understand their words, but the tone was unmistakable. Aggression, orders, confidence in their superior firepower. Luke whispered, "We need to create a path to escape. When they come through that corridor, we make them think there's more than there is." "Use your voice, okay?" The girl nodded, her small hands trembling but steady. "Yes," she said. Luke had an idea. He rigged a series of small alarms and lights along the corridors. Nothing lethal, just noise, sparks, and movement to mislead the patrol. It was a classic human tactic, relying on psychology and unpredictability. They would think there were more people inside the wreck, more resistance than a single human and two aliens could produce. The patrol entered. The first wave of soldiers moved cautiously, scanning for life signs. Sparks from Luke's traps drew their attention. Red alarms flashed across the walls. Figures moved in shadows as if more defenders were hiding in the darkness. The patrol hesitated, unsure. Luke used the moment to guide the mother onto a slightly raised platform, stabilizing her further with improvised supports. The little girl followed, repeating soothing words. Luke marveled at how quickly the child adapted, her bravery pushing him to focus harder. Humans were known for courage under pressure, but this was new. He was learning from an alien child how to inspire life to fight against death. The patrol hesitated longer than expected. Their sensors indicated life signs, but the readings were inconsistent. Luke had rerouted small power flows to create false signatures on their scanners. Sparks and flickering lights created shadows that moved as if alive. The patrol commander, frustrated, signaled for a more direct approach. Luke whispered to the girl, "Get ready." We're going to move. She clutched his hand tightly. I'm ready. They crawled along a maintenance shaft, narrow and dark, designed for small alien engineers. The mother was heavy, but Luke and the girl managed to stabilize her with makeshift slings and supports. Every step was careful, calculated. One wrong move, and the mother could fall back into critical condition. They reached a junction where the patrol's sensors were least effective. Luke paused to listen. Footsteps echoed close by, almost in rhythm with his own heartbeat. The girl pressed her face against his arm, trembling but silent. He knew she understood the danger. Almost there, he whispered. Just a few more meters. They emerged into a section of the wreck that still had partial environmental controls. Gravity was weak here, and metal scaffolding offered support for their movement. Luke used his engineering tools to create a temporary shield of energy, bending some of the failing conduits into a crude protective barrier. Sparks flew, but the patrol's scanners showed nothing substantial. Luke finally allowed himself a moment to examine the mother. Her breathing was shallow but stable. The little girl stroked her hair, whispering softly. Luke could see hope returning to her face. It was fragile, but it was there. He turned to the girl. We're not safe yet. We need to get to my ship, but we can do this. You're helping more than you know. The patrol was regrouping outside, frustrated by the false signals. Luke had slowed them, but they would not give up. He needed a plan to escape. His mind raced through the layout of the wreck, remembering the emergency pods he had seen when first entering. One of those could hold the mother and the girl while he diverted the patrol. It would be risky, but it was the only option. Luke instructed the girl to help him move her mother into a small emergency pod. It was cramped, but better than exposing her to the patrol. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and Luke used a portable energy pack from his ship to keep the pod operational. He rigged it to launch automatically if necessary. The little girl helped steady her mother, whispering words of encouragement. Luke could see the emotional bond between them was more powerful than any technology. Somehow, hope itself seemed to fuel the aliens' recovery. Just as they prepared the pod, a loud alarm rang through the wreck. The patrol had breached a secondary corridor and were heading toward them. Luke knew they had only moments. He positioned himself near a junction, ready to confront the intruders if needed. Humans were known for their resourcefulness, and he intended to prove it. The patrol entered, confident and armed, but Luke had set traps and distractions. Sparks and false energy readings created confusion. He used his tools to disable a few of their weapons temporarily, shorting circuits with careful precision. The intruders stumbled, surprised by a human who could think and act so quickly without advanced military equipment. The mother stirred in the pod, her vital signs holding. The girl watched Luke with wide eyes, a mixture of awe and trust. Luke knew that this moment would define them all. If he failed, the patrol would finish the job the galaxy had started, wiping out her species. But he would not fail. Humans did not survive by surrendering, and he refused to abandon them. He glanced at the girl. "Ready to move," he whispered. She nodded, her grip tight on his hand. Together, they guided the mother into the pod. Luke activated the emergency launch sequence. The pod's engines hummed, weak but functional. The patrol realized what was happening too late. Luke triggered a few more diversions and alarms, then led the girl toward a secondary escape hatch he had spotted earlier. The pod lifted off, carrying the mother and child to safety. Luke followed closely, using the shadows and failing corridors to remain unseen. The patrol tried to pursue, but Luke's quick thinking and intimate knowledge of the wreck allowed him to evade them. Finally, he reached his ship. He pulled the girl inside, then watched as the pod containing her mother detached and accelerated away. He monitored its path, ensuring it remained on a safe trajectory. The little girl looked at him, exhausted but smiling faintly. "You saved her," she whispered. Luke shook his head. "We saved her, together." As the patrol regrouped outside, Luke piloted his ship through a narrow debris field, weaving between broken metal and flickering energy trails. He did not know what would come next, only that humans had proven themselves unpredictable, capable of courage and ingenuity, and unwilling to abandon those in need. The little alien girl sat quietly beside him, still holding his hand. Luke glanced at her, realizing that this moment would be remembered not for battles fought with weapons, but for courage, hope, and the choice to act when others would have turned away. Somewhere deep inside the galaxy, the mother's pod drifted through the darkness, her life still fragile but alive. And Luke Harris, a human in a strange, dangerous galaxy, had just begun to show the universe that humans were not to be underestimated. The patrol would not forget tonight. The galaxy might not forget either. And somewhere a child had learned that even in a universe full of fear and cruelty, one human could make a difference. Luke leaned back, exhaling slowly. "We're not safe yet," he said quietly to himself. But for the first time that night, hope felt real. They had survived the impossible, and he knew that tomorrow, whatever came, they would face it together. The pod carrying the alien mother floated through the dark void, its engines barely enough to keep it on course. Luke piloted his ship close behind, scanning for any signs of the patrol. The little girl sat beside him, exhausted but alert, her luminous eyes still filled with fear and wonder. She had watched him save her mother, and somehow, despite everything, she seemed to trust him completely. Luke kept his hands steady on the controls, though his mind raced. The patrol would not give up so easily. They had orders to capture or eliminate any survivors of the alien species, and humans were considered minor, unpredictable threats. He had slowed them down, but the main problem had yet to arrive. The little girl leaned closer to him. "Are they going to follow us?" she asked, her voice soft. Luke shook his head. "They might try, but we have a head start. My ship is small, fast, and flexible. We can hide if we need to." He tried to sound confident, but the truth was he had no idea what would come next. The galaxy was vast, but the patrol was determined and well-equipped. The pod's sensors beeped. The mother stirred weakly, and Luke could see the effort it took for her to move. "We need to get her somewhere safe," he said quietly. "A place where she can heal at least a little." "Do you know anywhere like that?" The girl shook her head. "No, my mother, she said once there was a planet, a hidden world where no one could find us, but it's far." Her voice trailed off. Luke nodded. Distance did not matter. Humans were survivors. They could adapt to anything, and he had faced worse odds before. "Then that's where we'll go," he said firmly. "We'll get her there, you'll see." As they navigated through a narrow asteroid field, Luke explained his plan. He would pilot the pod and mother to the hidden planet, while he drew the patrol's attention away if they came close. It was risky. He had no weapons to match their ships, but he had speed, agility, and cunning, the kind of things humans were known for. The patrol scanners blinked again, detecting faint life signals. Luke cursed under his breath. They were closing in. He needed a diversion. He activated a small drone from his ship, sending it into the field of asteroids. Its lights flickered like a false signal, drawing attention away from the pod. The patrol diverted briefly, giving the mother a few more precious minutes. The little girl watched the maneuver with wide eyes. "You think that will work?" she asked. Luke smiled faintly. "Humans are good at improvising. We'll see." The pod's engines struggled as they navigated the debris, but Luke's skillful piloting kept them steady. He adjusted course carefully, keeping the patrol guessing. The mother's breathing was steady but shallow, and Luke monitored her vitals closely. He could see that she was stabilizing, but only just. The little girl whispered softly to her mother, speaking in their language. Luke had no idea what she said, but the effect was remarkable. The mother's eyes flickered open slightly, and her chest rose and fell with less effort. Luke realized something. The girl's presence, her words, and her care were helping. Emotional energy, hope, and trust. They were not measurable in any scanner, but they mattered. Humans knew this instinctively. Sometimes survival was not just about tools or weapons, but about connection. And here, that connection was keeping the mother alive. The patrol was persistent. They had split into multiple small crafts, attempting to flank the pod. Luke adjusted course to avoid the first wave, weaving through the asteroid field with precision. The rocks became shields, forcing the patrol ships to slow down or risk collision. One of the patrol ships fired a pulse at the pod, and Luke felt the blast rattle the hull. Sparks flew inside the pod, and the mother groaned. The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "Don't let them hurt her," she whispered fiercely. Luke gritted his teeth. He could not let them. He accelerated the pod into a narrow channel between two massive asteroids. The patrol could not follow without risking damage to their ships. Luke's heart pounded as he guided the pod through the twisting path, the mother clinging weakly to her daughter. Finally, they reached a temporary safe zone, a small hollow planet, partially hidden in the shadows of a giant gas giant. Its surface was rugged, with canyons and cliffs, perfect for hiding. Luke landed the pod on a flat plateau, and the engines hissed as they shut down. The mother was safe, at least for now. Luke helped the little girl out of the pod. She ran to her mother, holding her close, whispering words of comfort. Luke watched quietly, feeling a strange mixture of relief and determination. They were safe, but the patrol would not stop. The galaxy had rules, and humans were not part of them yet. He moved to the edge of the plateau, scanning the sky for signs of the patrol. There they were, small lights blinking in formation, searching for any trace of life. Luke knew he could not fight them head-on, but he could delay them. He pulled out a few small drones and set them on false courses, creating multiple signals that mimicked ships and structures. The patrol hesitated, unsure which signal to follow. The little girl came beside him, watching. "You're really human, aren't you?" she asked softly. Luke smiled faintly. "Yes, and sometimes humans do things that no one expects. We survive by thinking differently." She nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "You saved my mother." "They wouldn't have cared if we died." Luke felt a pang of anger. Humans understood fear, but they also understood courage. "Some people follow rules blindly," he said, "but others, they make choices that matter." As night fell on the hidden planet, Luke set up a temporary shelter using parts from his ship and scavenged materials. The little girl helped him carry supplies. The mother lay on a makeshift cot, her breathing more stable. Luke checked her vitals repeatedly, making small adjustments with his portable tools. Hours passed in tense silence. The patrol had not landed, but their presence was still felt in the distant lights of space. Luke knew they would continue searching, but he had given the mother and child a chance to survive. That was enough for now. The little girl sat beside her mother, holding her hand. Luke watched them quietly, realizing that the bond between parent and child was stronger than any weapon. Humans had fought wars, explored unknown worlds, and faced extinction, but at the heart of survival was connection. It was what made humans dangerous in ways others could not predict. Suddenly, the mother stirred and spoke weakly. Luke leaned closer, trying to hear. Her words were broken, fragmented, but the meaning was clear. She spoke of her species, of their history, and of the danger they had faced. Luke listened, understanding more than the words themselves. The patrol had hunted them not for offense, but out of fear. Fear of a species that could change the galaxy with empathy and understanding. Luke realized the stakes. This was not just about saving one life. It was about protecting knowledge, hope, and the potential to change the universe. Humans had often been underestimated, dismissed as primitive or reckless, but here he was proving that adaptability and courage could rival the most advanced technologies. The little girl looked up at him. "Will they come here?" she asked. Luke nodded slowly. "They might. But we will be ready. We can think faster, move smarter, and use what we have. That's how humans survive." She nodded, absorbing his words. For the first time since the attack, she seemed calm, trusting him completely. Luke felt a surge of determination. The patrol might have numbers, weapons, and authority, but humans had something no one could measure: ingenuity, courage, and the will to protect life against all odds. As the hours passed, Luke worked tirelessly to reinforce their temporary shelter. He rigged energy shields, rerouted power to maintain basic life support, and set up additional drones for early warning. The mother's condition improved slightly, her breathing more stable, her color returning to a soft glow. The little girl whispered continuously to her, her presence acting like a natural stabilizer. Luke realized something profound. Sometimes survival depended not on technology or firepower, but on hope, and humans had an abundance of it in ways others could not predict. The patrol continued their distant search, unaware of the clever maneuvers Luke had set in motion. They would return, but he had bought precious time. Time was all they needed to survive long enough for a more permanent solution. The little girl eventually fell asleep beside her mother, exhausted but peaceful. Luke watched over them, keeping vigil through the night. Stars blinked above in the cold expanse, indifferent to the struggles below. Yet in that hidden valley, a human had shown that courage, intellect, and compassion could hold back even the most relentless force. Luke leaned against a wall, exhausted but alert. He knew the patrol would return. He knew the galaxy would continue to underestimate humans. But he also knew something else. Humans did not give up. Humans fought when others ran. Humans adapted when others failed. And right now, that determination was all that stood between life and extinction for two beings no one else cared about. For the first time that night, Luke allowed himself a faint smile. They had survived the impossible. The mother was alive. The little girl trusted him. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, a ripple of hope had begun. The patrol would not forget this night. They might come back with more ships, more weapons, and more authority. But they had never faced humans like Luke Harris before. Humans who could think, feel, improvise, and protect when no one else would. Humans who were willing to stand in the gap and say, quietly but firmly, that life was worth fighting for. Luke glanced at the sleeping pair. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "No matter what comes next, we will survive, together." The stars continued to burn coldly overhead, but in the hidden valley, light and hope flickered in the darkness. And humanity, once again, had proven that even a single human could change the course of fate. The hidden planet was quiet, almost eerily so. The little girl slept beside her mother, their breathing slow and steady under the temporary shelter Luke had built. Luke himself could not rest. Outside, the dark expanse of space stretched endlessly, and he knew the patrol would not give up. The galaxy had rules, and humans had never been part of them, at least not officially. But Luke had a secret advantage: unpredictability and a stubborn refusal to surrender. He reviewed the scans from the patrol's last approach. Their numbers were small but lethal, equipped with the latest weapons and tactics designed to suppress resistance. The patrol commander had underestimated one thing: humans did not fight by rules alone. Humans fought with creativity, intuition, and courage, qualities that no scanner could measure. Luke's mind raced. The mother's species had once been peaceful, yet powerful in ways the galaxy feared. They could influence minds, calm hostility, and change the outcome of conflicts without a single weapon. The coalition had tried to erase them, but if this little girl survived, the knowledge of her species could endure. Humanity could become an unexpected protector, a force the galaxy could not ignore. He adjusted the energy shields around the shelter, reinforcing weak points with whatever materials he had salvaged from his ship and the wreck. Sparks flew as circuits hummed to life, but the temporary structure held. Luke's hands were steady, though his mind raced with calculations and contingency plans. He had learned long ago that survival required preparation, not panic. Hours passed, and the patrol returned. Their ships formed a tight formation, scanning for the faint signatures of the pod and shelter. Luke had anticipated this. Using small drones, he created multiple false signals in nearby asteroid fields and mountain ridges. The patrol's sensors flickered and hesitated. They could not be certain where the survivors were, and every second of confusion bought time for the mother and child. The little girl stirred and woke. She looked at Luke with wide eyes. "Are they back?" she whispered. Luke nodded. "Yes, but don't worry, we have time." "And we have a plan." She watched him quietly, sensing the confidence in his movements. Humans, she realized, were strange. Fragile, yes, but strong in ways that could not be predicted. Luke was not a soldier, yet he moved like one, anticipating danger, adapting to every new threat. Luke glanced at the mother. She was still weak, but her breathing had improved slightly. The little girl touched her hand and whispered softly, words of encouragement that Luke could not understand, but could see the effect of. The mother's chest rose and fell more steadily, her color returning to a soft glow. Luke realized that the child's presence was as important to survival as any technology or medical device he could rig. Suddenly, the patrol fired a warning pulse at the hidden valley. The shields shuddered but held. Luke activated a series of drones, sending them on false courses, drawing the patrol's attention away from the shelter. Sparks flew and lights flickered, creating illusions of movement. The patrol commander cursed through the comms, frustrated by the unexpected tactics. Luke whispered to the girl, "We need to move her to a more secure location, deeper inside the valley. Can you help me?" She nodded without hesitation. Together, they lifted the mother carefully, using slings and improvised supports. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and silent. The patrol scanned the area but could not pinpoint their location. The drones continued to provide false signals, creating confusion and buying time. As they moved, the mother spoke weakly. Her words were broken, but Luke understood enough to grasp the gravity of the situation. She spoke of her species, history, of their peaceful ways and abilities, and of the reason they had been hunted. The galaxy had feared their power to influence minds and change conflicts without weapons. They had been labeled dangerous, and entire colonies had been destroyed. Luke's jaw tightened. Humans had faced fear and prejudice throughout history, but they had also survived against impossible odds. He understood the fear of the coalition, but he also knew that courage, ingenuity, and determination could overcome it. The little girl looked up at him. "Can they really hurt us?" she asked. Luke shook his head. "Not if we're careful. We have speed, intelligence, and courage, and we have each other. That's more than most of them expect." They reached a hidden cave deep in the valley, shielded by natural rock formations and shadows. Luke reinforced the entrance with energy barriers and debris, creating a near-impenetrable defense. He set up surveillance drones to alert them if the patrol came close. For the first time since they arrived, Luke allowed himself a moment to breathe. The mother's vitals were stable and the little girl rested beside her. But Luke knew the battle was not over. The patrol would return, more determined than ever. He needed a strategy that went beyond hiding. He needed to change the balance of power. He accessed his ship's communication array, scanning for allies. Independent human ships were scattered throughout the sector, often ignored by the coalition. Luke sent out coded distress signals, hoping for assistance from civilians, traders, and medics who did not follow official rules but had the skills and courage to help. He did not ask for a fleet. He asked for humans who could think and act, who could make a difference without orders. Hours later, faint responses began to arrive. Small vessels, unarmed but fast, acknowledged the signals. Luke coordinated their approach, guiding them through asteroid fields and debris to avoid patrol detection. It was a risky plan, but humans had always thrived on risk and improvisation. Meanwhile, the mother stirred and spoke again. Her words were urgent. She warned of the patrol's true intention, to eliminate her species entirely, leaving no survivors. Luke listened carefully, absorbing the details. This was not just a routine hunt, it was a campaign of erasure. Humanity's intervention could tip the scales, not through brute force, but through clever strategy and unexpected alliances. The little girl looked at Luke with wide, fearful eyes. "Do you think they'll listen to us?" Luke smiled faintly. "They don't have to listen. They just have to follow the plan. Humans can make the impossible happen when we work together." As night fell, the patrol launched a coordinated attack on the valley. Small ships descended, scanning the area with deadly precision. Luke activated his drones and energy barriers, creating illusions and false targets. The patrol's sensors were confused, unable to distinguish real threats from fabricated ones. Sparks and flashing lights added to the chaos. Luke moved with the little girl and mother, guiding them through hidden tunnels and narrow passages. The patrol fired pulses and scanned relentlessly, but Luke's ingenuity kept them one step ahead. He rigged old machinery to create loud noises in distant areas, drawing the patrol away from the real location. At one point, the patrol landed a small boarding party near the cave. Luke intercepted them, using shadows, debris, and improvised tools to disable their equipment without causing fatalities. The humans' ability to improvise shocked the patrol. They had expected easy compliance, but Luke demonstrated something no scanner could measure: human ingenuity, courage, and determination. The mother's condition remained fragile, but she was alive. The little girl whispered continuously to her, her words a mixture of encouragement and comfort. Luke realized that the child's emotional energy was a key factor in survival. Humans understood this instinctively. Hope and courage could be just as effective as any weapon. The patrol regrouped outside, confused by the humans' tactics. Luke took the opportunity to contact the incoming human vessels. Small ships began to appear in the sector, unarmed but strategically positioned. They would not fight directly, but their presence added pressure and distraction. The patrol was forced to divide its attention, unsure of where the real threat lay. Luke watched as the little girl and her mother began to relax slightly. They were safe for now, but the galaxy's forces would not stop. Luke understood that this was a test of endurance, strategy, and courage. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had survived. He would ensure that these two lives would survive as well. The patrol commander, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, called for reinforcements. Luke anticipated this and had already prepared countermeasures. He had rigged the environment with traps and distractions, using both natural terrain and salvaged technology. Each step was calculated to buy time and protect the mother and child. Luke realized the importance of communication and coordination. Humans thrived when they shared knowledge, adapted quickly, and trusted their instincts. The little girl and her mother were part of this strategy. their cooperation and trust amplifying his efforts. Hours turned into a tense night. The patrol attempted multiple incursions, but each time they were met with clever misdirection and unexpected obstacles. Luke's strategies were effective not because of superior firepower, but because of creativity, adaptability, and an unyielding will to survive. By dawn, the patrol's forces were frustrated and depleted. Their repeated failures had cost them resources and morale. Luke knew they would not give up entirely, but he had bought a critical window of opportunity. The mother and child were stable, and human allies were arriving, ready to provide support in ways the patrol could not anticipate. The little girl looked at Luke with gratitude and awe. "You're really human," she said softly. Luke smiled. "Yes, and humans do what they must to survive and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what makes us different." The mother stirred, her voice weak but clear. She spoke words of thanks and hope, her eyes meeting Luke's with trust and relief. Luke understood the weight of that trust. The galaxy had underestimated humans, but here, they had proven themselves capable of extraordinary courage and ingenuity. As the sun rose over the hidden valley, casting light on the rugged landscape, Luke knew that the battle was not yet over. The patrol would return and the galaxy's rules would continue to challenge them. But humanity had shown its value, courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. Luke glanced at the little girl and her mother. "We will survive this," he said quietly. "Together we will change the odds." For the first time, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. The patrol was persistent, but humans were unpredictable. They would not give up. And in the galaxy's darkest corners, that unpredictability, that courage, and that ingenuity could make all the difference. The little girl smiled faintly, holding her mother's hand. Luke looked at them and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had once again shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one human, or a small group, could change the course of events. And this was only the beginning. The hidden valley was calm in the early light, but Luke knew it was only a temporary peace. The patrol had not given up, and the galaxy's orders had not changed. They were determined to eliminate the alien species and anyone who dared help them. But Luke had learned something crucial. Humans did not give up, and humans did not follow rules blindly. They acted and they adapted. The mother lay on a reinforced cot, her breathing steady but still fragile. The little girl sat beside her, brushing her hand over her mother's arm, whispering softly in their language. Luke watched them, feeling a strange mix of admiration, responsibility, and determination. He had saved lives, but more importantly, he had protected hope itself. The communication console on his ship beeped quietly. Luke leaned over to check the signal. Multiple small human vessels had responded to his distress call, scattered across nearby systems. They were not soldiers, but independent pilots, medics, and explorers. Their numbers were small, their ships modest, but their willingness to act without orders made them powerful in ways the patrol could not predict. Luke activated a secure channel. "Listen carefully," he said. "We are facing a patrol that does not understand humans. They follow rules, but we do not. We will survive through ingenuity, coordination, and courage. Spread out, create diversions, and focus on protecting life. That is our advantage." The response was immediate. Pilots acknowledged, medics confirmed readiness, and even some traders offered supplies. Luke felt a spark of hope. Humanity, unpredictable and courageous, was beginning to tip the scales. The little girl watched him intently. "Will they come here again?" she asked softly. Luke shook his head. "They might try, but we are ready. Humans survive by thinking differently. They cannot predict what we will do." As the day progressed, Luke worked tirelessly to strengthen the shelter and prepare for any patrol incursion. He set up energy barriers, traps, and surveillance drones. The mother's condition improved steadily, aided by the girl's presence and the makeshift medical support Luke had rigged. Every adjustment, every patch, every whispered word of comfort mattered. He could see it in her vitals, the hope and care of two beings, human and alien, working together to preserve life. Suddenly, a patrol ship appeared on the horizon, scanning aggressively. Luke took a deep breath. "It's time," he whispered. "Prepare for their arrival, but stay calm. We fight with brains, not just weapons." The patrol landed a small force near the valley entrance, confident and armed. They believed the humans would panic, flee, or surrender. Luke had other plans. He activated the drones, sending them to create multiple false signatures across the cliffs and canyons. Sparks and flashing lights produced shadows that seemed alive. The patrol hesitated, unsure where the real threat lay. Luke moved to the cave entrance with the little girl. "Stay close," he said. "We protect her and we use the environment to our advantage." The patrol entered cautiously, their scanners blinking as they tried to detect life. Luke watched, analyzing patterns and anticipating movements. He used the natural terrain to create choke points, forcing the patrol into narrow corridors where their numbers were less effective. Simple tools and clever improvisation created barriers and distractions that bought precious seconds. The mother stirred, weak but aware. Luke whispered to her, "We are safe for now. Stay calm, we have humans coming to help." Her eyes flickered with trust. She had seen courage and ingenuity in Luke, something rare in the galaxy. For the first time since the attack, she felt a fragile sense of hope. The little girl watched Luke with awe. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "Fragile yet so strong." Luke smiled faintly. "Yes, we survive by adapting, by thinking, by protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That is what makes us dangerous when no one expects it." The patrol commander, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, called for reinforcements. More ships approached, but Luke anticipated this. He had communicated with human allies, coordinating their positions in nearby asteroid fields and mountain ridges. They were not here to fight directly, but to create confusion, provide supplies, and block escape routes for the patrol. As reinforcements arrived, the balance began to shift. Small human vessels appeared in unexpected positions, creating multiple false threats. The patrol ships were forced to divide their attention, unsure which signals were real. Luke had turned the terrain, his ingenuity, and the humans' unpredictability into an advantage. The mother's condition continued to improve, aided by the little girl's constant presence. She whispered words of encouragement, her emotional energy stabilizing the alien physiology in ways no technology could replicate. Luke watched quietly, realizing that hope, trust, and compassion were weapons just as powerful as any laser or energy shield. The patrol, growing frustrated, attempted to land troops closer to the cave. Luke anticipated the move and activated improvised traps, fallen rocks, energy barriers, and false alarms. The patrol stumbled, confused by the constant misdirection. Luke moved with precision, guiding the little girl and mother through hidden passages, staying one step ahead of the intruders. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional alarm or the patrol's frustrated shouts. Luke's mind never rested. He coordinated with human allies, adjusted defenses, and monitored the mother's vitals. Every small victory mattered. A patrol ship delayed here, a false signal there, another system stabilized for the mother's survival. As night fell, the patrol commander realized the human strategy was not based on firepower alone, but on intelligence, adaptability, and courage. He cursed the unpredictability, unable to anticipate every maneuver. Luke had demonstrated what humans were capable of, thinking creatively, protecting life, and surviving against overwhelming odds. Luke paused for a moment, looking at the little girl and mother. The mother smiled faintly, whispering gratitude. The little girl's eyes shone with hope and trust. Luke felt a deep sense of purpose. Humanity, often underestimated, had once again proven that courage, intelligence, and the will to act could change the outcome of seemingly impossible situations. The patrol, demoralized and confused by human ingenuity, began to retreat. Their formation broke, and their attacks became less coordinated. Luke knew this was the turning point. He signaled the human allies to approach carefully, providing supplies, medical support, and additional reinforcements to ensure the mother and child remained safe. The little girl whispered to Luke, "They won't hurt us now, will they?" Luke shook his head. "No. Not while we are here and not while humans are willing to protect life. Courage and ingenuity matter more than fear or weapons." The mother, her breathing steady and her color returning, looked at Luke with trust. You saved us," she whispered. Luke smiled. "We saved you." Together, over the next few days, Luke coordinated with human allies to establish a secure perimeter around the hidden valley. The mother received care, slowly regaining strength, while the little girl remained by her side. Humans shared supplies, knowledge, and strategies, all without centralized orders or strict hierarchy. Their unpredictability and resourcefulness created a network of protection the patrol could not penetrate. The patrol commander reported the failure to superiors, but the records could not fully capture the human ingenuity that had thwarted them. The galaxy began to hear whispers. Humans had intervened, protecting a species others had tried to erase. Stories spread of courage, adaptability, and the refusal to abandon life, no matter the odds. Luke knew that their mission was only partially complete. The mother's species still faced danger, but for now, they were alive. The little girl had learned trust, hope, and resilience. Humanity had earned respect, not through conquest, but through action, courage, and compassion. Weeks later, the mother's strength returned enough to travel. Luke helped her and the little girl relocate to a safer world, far from the patrol and the coalition's reach. The mother's knowledge, her species, history, and her unique abilities would survive thanks to human intervention. The little girl looked at Luke one last time before departing. "Why did you help us?" she asked softly. Luke smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Humans survive by protecting life, by standing up when others would walk away. It doesn't matter species, size, or strength. Life is worth defending. That is what makes humans human." The mother nodded in agreement. "You have changed everything for us. You have given us hope where none existed." Luke watched as they departed, feeling a quiet pride. Humanity had once again shown that courage, intelligence, and compassion could alter the course of events. The galaxy may never fully understand the human heart, but those who witnessed it would remember. As Luke piloted his ship back to known space, he thought of the little girl, her mother, and the patrol that had underestimated humans. Humanity had shown that they could survive impossible odds, protect the vulnerable, and act when others would hesitate. They were not conquerors nor saviors. They were humans, unpredictable, courageous, and determined. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and distant, yet Luke felt a warmth inside. Humanity's presence mattered. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion could change the galaxy, one choice at a time. And somewhere in the hidden valley, a species that the galaxy had tried to erase would survive, nurtured by the actions of a single human and the hope he inspired. Luke leaned back in his pilot's seat, allowing himself a rare moment of peace. He had saved lives, preserved hope, and proven that humans, though fragile, could achieve the extraordinary. The galaxy had not yet learned the full measure of human potential, but that was their advantage. Humans did not follow rules, they made their own, fought for what mattered, and never abandoned those in need. The little girl's words echoed in his mind, fragile yet so strong. Yes, Luke thought, that was humanity. Fragile, yes. But when it mattered most, stronger than anyone expected.